program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
We will call the meeting to order. Welcome to the July 15th, 2019 Plan Commission meeting. This meeting is being broadcast, pardon me. This meeting is being broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994, WRFP-LP 101.9 FM, and online at valleymediaworks.org. The Plan Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner, with the constraint that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and business-like fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first, then others, either for or against the proposal, are each permitted to speak once. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issues before us, avoid unnecessary repetition, and be prudent in the use of time. We want to be sure that we have adequate time to review and discuss all items with equal diligence. Please remember to turn your phones off or on silent during the meeting. If you do plan to speak tonight, there are little gold slips of paper in the back. If you would please fill out your name and address, the requested information on there, and when you come and speak, give your name and address as you address the commission. With that, we'll begin with item number 1, which is a public hearing for recommendation to City Council on the capital improvement plan for 2020 to 2024. Mr. Allen is going to give the presentation on this tonight.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. I have the honor and privilege of presenting the capital improvement plan for 2020 to 2024. This previously and more regularly was presented by the Finance Department, but in order to kind of work through any kind of planning related issues, I'll be presenting the CIP before you this evening. The request is to find and determine that the CIP is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I'll be presenting that for you here this evening and field any questions and hopefully a recommendation to carry forward to the plan, to the City Council next week. So with that, hopefully everybody had an opportunity to look through the capital improvement plan for 2020 to 2024. Apologize, I'll be kind of jumping ahead, skipping through quickly some of the different pages here, so don't want to cause anybody vertigo, but we'll zip through here fairly quickly. So we'll be looking at the different project details through the funds. I'll jump through most of them fairly quickly again. There are a number we'll kind of just take a pause and look at a few specific projects moving forward with things that are more specifically related to Planning Commission, especially potential future review and approvals of projects, as well as more topically things that are more clearly related to the comprehensive plan. And again, with the comprehensive plan itself, we can certainly jump over to that if there are any questions. I have that available here as well. Again, the way the 2015 comprehensive plan was laid out is that there are kind of some action plans, action items for each of the different topical areas. So that being the case, the CIP and the comprehensive plan do intersect quite a bit, even on some of the more, I hate to say mundane, but some of the more, I guess, maintenance related and infrastructure related projects. But with that, I'll probably be skipping through those a little bit more quickly. So with that, hopefully everybody had an opportunity to read through the introduction. Introduction was from the City Manager, Dale Peters, and talks about what the what a CIP project is. It's typically Again, a capital project is typically such which holds a value of at least $5,000 and possesses a useful life greater than 1 year. Again, that can be quite a bit of variety of things, anything from, again, sanitary sewer projects to, software to anything in between. This one in particular, the 2020 to 2024 proposed CIP, looks at just over $209 million in projects over the next 5 years. And again, the time horizon for the CIP is that of 5 years. Of the total cost, $61 million is proposed for us next year. And of that, $17 million is allocated or directed towards renovations and expansions at the library itself. So with that, the next largest share is dedicated to transportation improvements, just under $12 million in proposed expenditures. One of the major capital projects identified is that of downtown parking, so we'll talk a little bit about that moving forward here. And again, that does speak directly to some of the comprehensive plan segments, particularly Chapter 12, which is the downtown plan. Again, I won't get into all the different financial breakdowns at this point, but do want to highlight some of the process and where we stand in that timeline. Zoom in a little bit here. I can see it's a little bit hard to read on the overhead there. There we go. So as you see here, I highlighted we're at the Planning Commission review. This entire project kicked off back in March with different departmental preparation of different requests, review with the city manager, and then a number of council work sessions beginning late May through June. So with that, again, we stand near the conclusion of the process. The Planning Commission, again, is one of the final filters, taking the comprehensive plan lens and applying that to the CIP. So again, here are all the different department summaries called departments. They're different funds. And again, these are also in the table of contents, so you can jump through each one of those, and again, shows each of the different 5-year proposed expenditures for those projects. And again, highlighting the numbers I had just mentioned moments ago. This is where some of the funding comes from and is allocated. And with that, again, different funds. Fund 402 is about water improvements. I can jump through this unless there are any questions. 404 addresses the water sewer utility. Again, hang on. Some of the visuals here we'll kind of skip through quickly. Stormwater improvements is Fund 405. 406 are parking improvements. As we'll take our first pause here. So with that highlighted, that downtown, it's called Downtown Structured Parking Program. It's Project 6. Again, each of the projects I should have mentioned earlier are identified with a 1, 2, or 3 priority ranking. So this is 2 kind of in the middle of the road with that, as it were, with 2021 being the first real expenditure, and then looking at phasing that in over the subsequent years. So with that, I can kind of jump ahead to that project-specific details here. Again, talking about the Gibson Street parking ramp, and emphasizing or referring to the downtown parking study that's currently underway and being wrapped up here yet this summer, I believe. And again, just identifying through each project identifies a justification based on the City Council's strategic goals and objectives. And again, in the top right, you can see contact references, what type of project it is, useful life, and whether it's a one-time project or a recurring project. So with that, we can come back if there are questions specific to any of these. Fund 408 is with public transit. Nothing specific to highlight there. The Transit Transfer Center and related housing development with that have already been identified and allocated elsewhere, so those are not identified in these future years in this project. So if you're looking for that specific project, that's already been identified in previous years. Moving ahead, there's a specific fund for the Hobbs Ice Arena. Fairfax Pool also has its own fund. Then we get into more of the kind of regular operations of the city, again, funding the capital improvements related to those kind of standard operations, central equipment in particular, where we identify vehicle replacements. And then we get into environmental improvements, which is really land, kind of land-related environmental improvements, primarily related to risk management. That's the identified fund type here, related to city-owned landfills and other kind of contingency environmental projects. So these are things that are more long-term related to environmental cleanups, as it were, which again is different from some of the other projects I'll highlight here in one of the largest funds in terms of project number, if not project costs, and that's Fund 434. That is the land, building, and equipment. So the Community Development Department in particular, this is where a majority of projects we would propose are identified. One of those is Land Acquisition Reserve. This is city reserve funds for acquiring land for various purposes, primarily for parkland and related purposes. Investment in renewable energy. This is one that was launched, I believe, just last year. And again, have identified individual projects each year related to investments in renewable energy. Again, these are capital projects, so these are more structurally based infrastructure, things of that sort. Participatory budgeting. This is a new project that's taking off and just getting launched here as we speak, and that'll help put together, work with a consultant, putting together a process, kind of a toolkit for the City of Eau Claire to identify a process for allocating what's proposed here, $100,000 each year, to be placed into a participatory budgeting process. So that is, I would say, kind of a placeholder, but it is in a way, and those projects then are identified through that participatory budgeting process. Another brand new one is that of investments in affordable housing. Naturally, that's garnered quite a bit of attention lately, and in fact, and very much so over the last year with the Chippewa Valley Regional Housing Task Force, which had one of its concluding meetings, in fact, just this morning. But as you see here, identifying post two-year work plan that the City Council has identified, then allocating funds subsequent to that. So I know there's been some discussion, interest, dialogue on whether these specific numbers should be modified, moved, reallocated, what have you. But this is, again, the initial proposal presented by the city manager, and moving forward here for your consideration tonight. So don't want to just skip over that. That is one that, in particular, again, being a new project, certainly not had a full framing of exactly what that would look like or what the full purpose and intention is. But again, that's one that's been acknowledged at least as a priority moving forward. So with that, again, we can come back to these as we go. I can highlight each of the different project descriptions, but you can kind of read through those as well. Again, not a lot provided in terms of detail for that, in particular, that affordable housing component, but it is identified and specific to, again, capital projects. So that could be anything from actual structural improvements, land purchase, things of that sort. Fund 441, also another large category. both in projects and in dollar amounts. Again, this is the transportation improvements, so did not identify anything here in particular, but again, you can see kind of the general maintenance projects with street and sidewalk improvements is the largest dollar amount here, as well as some specific railroad safety and Dewey Street improvements. Closing it out here with Parks and Rec, Fund 450. Again, also another large project list, and one that also touches, kind of comes across your desks as they proceed. For example, Southwest Dog Park boat launch that's already been presented before the Planning Commission. Looking at future Northside Dog Park. One of the larger ones here is the kind of long-planned Northwest Community Park, part of the 5-year Parks Master Plan. I should show the years here. You can see 2022 for that. And then relocation of Roosevelt Park, which was, again, related to some recent land purchases in that area. So with that, there are also 3 separate tax incremental district funds, numbers 9, 11, and 13. Sorry, scroll down here quickly. TID 9 is essentially the Northwest Gateway Business Park. And again, a lot of this is just for land acquisition. Same for, sorry, scroll through here. TID number 11, which is, it's listed as downtown. Sometimes can be the South Barstow area. That again is also identifies here more specifically that parking situation as it's related to the Gibson Street parking ramp. So, and then finally is the newest one, of which I should note, placed at all your spaces this evening, is the kind of draft amended narrative that the finance director gave to me to hand out, just trying to incorporate the comments and edits that were recommended by the Planning Commission last time. So with that, again, this is the current map of the current Cannery District plan, which is currently under redevelopment, meaning the plan is under redevelopment. And with that, again, would be a future TID plan. I wanted to highlight here too, again, because this is one that's recent to you and one that will be looking at some new updates here shortly as the TID itself is launched over the next several years with street improvements, and then also with the park itself. Again, these numbers could change based on that redevelopment plan and it's being edited or modified over the next few months, in fact. And finally, again, one of the biggest dollar amount projects is that for the library and the library fund, and identifying that for this next year. So again, these are some of the projects, just trying to highlight the ones that at the very least would be coming forward to the Plan Commission for your review, either through site plan or rezoning, what have you, moving forward. And just want to get those in front of you so you know, kind of planning ahead as this proposal stands, again, a draft proposal with the CIP. These are the projects that would most likely come before you. And again, did want to reiterate the fact that the comprehensive plan and the CIP do intersect really at all levels with every project, but every fund type, and how they tie back into the various chapters of the comprehensive plan, from everything to the transportation plan and public utilities plan to, again, that downtown plan and housing plan as well. So with that, I think that ends the CIP itself. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Wolf-Graham.
Chairperson Larson, and thank you Mr. Allen, so just bear with me for a couple of minutes. I've prepared some comments, and I just want to acknowledge that good people differ on the purpose of a city's budget and their plans, including this capital improvement plan. My perspective is that our budget, our capital improvements plan is a social contract and communicates to residents what our city values. And currently and to date, what we communicate we value primarily is maintenance and replacement of public amenities. And the Leader Telegram also this morning had emphasized that, with the majority of the dollars going towards this function. And I do understand that. Since the summer of 2018, with the Alice report coming out and our community learning that almost half of our residents are experiencing housing insecurity, and also learning recently that 14.4% are experiencing poverty from the Wisconsin Poverty 2017 report, I posit that we need to revision what we spend our money on and prioritize people. I wanted to recommend that these limited affordable housing dollars would be included earlier in the CIP than later, beginning in 2020, given that our residents have an urgency of now. As you referenced, Mr. Allen, the Chippewa Valley Affordable Housing Task Force has many recommendations for how we can use the monies. I personally believe the evidence is in. I'm not going to review any here this evening, nor will I make any suggestions for any dollar amounts. In terms of the comprehensive plan, there are 3 chapters in the 2015 plan that are linked to this recommendation. The primary one is the Housing Assistance, Diversity, and Design Plan Objectives 1 and 3, Housing Affordability and Housing Diversity. I won't go into details on either one of them. So for me, I'll be able to recommend approval and determine that the CIP is consistent with the comprehensive plan if there is some accommodation for affordable housing beginning in 2020. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Allen.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing, so we will welcome any comments from the public who might wish to express their opinion on this agenda item. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Judy Mosley. I reside at 2230 Trimble Street in Eau Claire, and I'm the co-chair of Jonah's Affordable Housing Task Force here in Eau Claire. I'm here tonight to share my views on the capital improvement project, and in particular the inclusion of those designated dollars for affordable housing that in the plan is set to begin in 2022. I believe that those dollars really need to start earlier, and I believe that because it is so urgent. I'm not asking that we increase the total number of dollars, just that rather than putting off the beginning of spending those dollars until 2022, we start it in 2020. I think the need is that urgent in our community that we do something. And I want you to know that I feel your struggle. I mean, I get it. I'm a homeowner. I have to go through my own capital improvement project every year. I had to decide this spring whether I was going to hire somebody to regrade the patio, which is failing because it was built in 1958 and it's crumbling now. And if I don't rebuild it, it's going to let water into the basement. But do I do that, or do I take my limited dollars and do I repave the cement driveway, which was also installed in 1958, so that it doesn't shed ice and snow into the window wells? So while I'm weighing this, my refrigerator, washer, and clothes dryer all failed within 3 weeks. It was like there was this conspiracy of appliances in my house. So, you know, I get that life doesn't cooperate with us all the time, and certainly not with our budget. So I don't mean to make light of the decision that you have to make, because I have a hard enough time when I start thinking about concrete and compressors and how I'm going to pay for both of those things out of the same budget. I have no idea what it must be like to try to maintain a budget for the infrastructure of a city the size of Eau Claire. What I do know is that my budget at home and our budget for the city of Eau Claire reflects our values. It reflects my priorities, and in my community, I want my priorities to be the lives and livelihoods of our citizens and the economic future of our community. I want those things to be at the top of the list. So when I read that the CIP proposes to include affordable housing dollars, not now, but a few years down the road, I worried that that wasn't really a true reflection of our values. And when I heard that we're proposing to spend $150,000 to maintain the fountain in Wilson Park, I worried again. I love fountains. I love beautiful old fountains in beautiful old parks, and I want every single one of them to be maintained. But I'm not sure that when it weighs against the immediate need of affordable housing for our citizens, that that's a fair weight and that we're putting our priorities in the right place. So I'd rather put off the fountain for a couple of years, and I realize it's been put off already, but, you know, let's put things off a little bit further and then reprioritize the dollars that we've already agreed we want to spend, but we're just putting off for a few years. Now, I agree with City Council President Terry Weld when he says that we shouldn't be spending taxpayer dollars without having a strategy in place, because that's common sense, and that's good fiscal responsibility. But I don't agree that it's going to take us 2 or 3 years to create that strategy. Just this morning, I participated in the Chippewa Valley Housing Task Force meeting, in which the task force approved a 7-page document that is filled with over 40 strategies for increasing affordable housing in the Eau Claire area. I think we have the strategy in the place. We have the best minds in the city of Eau Claire have been getting together for well over a year to look at this issue, to look at our community and our needs, and we've already developed a strategy. I think what's left is for the city to decide that they're going to take the things that are in the city comprehensive plan, in particular the one that sticks out at me as the Housing Assistance Diversity and Design Plan chapter. In Objectives 1 and 3, it says that we should be spending dollars on affordable housing initiatives. We now have over 40 initiatives that we could spend dollars on. So I think that that's a priority and that it should happen quickly. I'm not a huge believer in hashtags. I don't use them a lot. But if I had to develop one for this situation, it would be hashtag people first, not fountains first. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions from the commission for our speaker? Mr. Brenholm.
First of all, thank you for your comments, and it's hard to argue people versus fountains. It's very well said. Say there was the $150,000 for the fountain that was pulled up to next year. What would, in your perfect world, what would you spend it on for affordable housing?
I think, I realize that we have to kind of start out in increments and do little things first and build up. We can't throw a big pot of money at it, as much as I'd like to do that too. But I think something simple like creating some developer incentives. It might be something as simple as we have some older stock housing that needs to be renovated to bring it up to code. We could provide some assistance and some incentives to do lead abatement, do asbestos abatement, do those kind of things that make it too expensive for a developer to take on by themselves, or even a homeowner.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the commission for the speaker? Thank you. Thank you for taking time.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public wish to speak on the capital improvement plan? Seeing none, let's start by seeing if there's a motion and a second for this item. No? Okay, Commissioner Seymour?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Granlund. Right, any discussion from the commission on this item? Commissioner Wolfgren.
Can I clarify then that what we're voting on now is the CIP plan as it stands? Without the affordable housing?
Well, yes, we are. Are we allowed to make amendments to a recommendation? We are. We are allowed to make amendments.
So I'm still becoming accustomed to how to do that here?
Well, if you have an amendment, you can state your amendment to move money from one place to another. This is just our recommendation to City Council. So I guess the CIP would go to City Council with an addendum that we recommended an amendment to it. Is that how it would work, Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there is in your packet, there was a sample motion just for ease of process, but that can certainly be something that, again, that has that as it stands is what has been moved, and that is Commissioner Seymour moved that the 2020-2024 capital improvement plan presented as documented file in the office of the city clerk and open to public inspection during normal business hours is consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval thereof, seconded by Commissioner Granlund. And now if there are any amendments or then an additional motion would be in order.
So the motion is, as Mr. Allen read. If you would like to amend the motion, you may add a statement or make an amendment to add a statement to that motion stating X, Y, Z.
Someone can certainly clarify my wording of this, but I would amend that the dollars allocated in the capital improvement plan for affordable housing, that a portion of that be moved up to the year 2020 instead of waiting until 2022.
So moved.
So,
if that's so moved, then we would need a second.
so do we have a wording for that?
That is, I think
Okay.
that's agreeable in terms of protocol or process.
Okay, all right. Is there a second for that motion? Commissioner Brenholm?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there discussion on the motion? This is just on the motion. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. And that motion passes unanimously. So we have before us the original motion as amended by Commissioner Wolfgram. Any further discussion on item number 1? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, this is the second capital improvement plan that I've been involved with, and obviously be voting on it on City Council next week. I guess, the discussion around priorities is very important and where our values lie. And I just want to call attention to one area of spending that I think could potentially use some reprioritization. I'm just not exactly sure how. And it could free up money for things like affordable housing. It also may not be able to, based on where the funding is coming from in the first place. And that area would be just the area of parking, and mostly downtown parking is something that is A lot of it is kind of aging infrastructure downtown, like the Gibson ramp. And the TIF districts are proposed to fund most of the cost of replacing parking spaces or building new ones. And I'm hearing from our engineering department there's about 1,000 spaces that could be reconstructed downtown over the next 6 years to the tune of nearly $30 million. And that's kind of a shocking number in light of, discussions about a fountain of $150,000 as potentially a place to cut from for affordable housing. And here we're going to spend nearly $30 million on housing for automobiles. So I'm not exactly sure what the solution is. I just kind of want to raise that. And obviously, that's an important part of our downtown is that we can build structured parking so that we don't have parking lots on the river. And we just replaced one recently and put an amazing plaza with a fountain right at the confluence of our two rivers. So there's a lot of ways I think we could look critically at that and look critically at the comprehensive plan as to what it might be able to tell us about alternatives to spending nearly $30 million on parking ramps. So I don't really have an amendment of sorts to raise that issue in a more specific way, but I think I'd like to hear folks' ideas in the long run about what we can do, both about affordable housing, but also about the parking issue and how that is something we need to address, but maybe there's a smarter way to do it. So,
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments about the capital improvement plan? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And that motion passes. And we move on to item number 2, which is a public hearing for a recommendation to City Council on an improvement of a portion of the street to be, approval of a portion of the street to be vacant on Cameron Street. Ms. Ness.
Good evening. On the aerial map, this is item number 2, located just west of the river. Here's the aerial map that's included in your photo. And the city has initiated a process to vacate the referenced right-of-way, so west of Oxford Avenue in the alleyway between Maxon and Cameron Street, to provide abilities for future development in this area related to the Cannery District. The existing right-of-way is this full width. We have had conflicting reports of the right-of-way of the alley being vacated already, so our inclusion of that tonight is to document the right-of-way vacation of the alley portion as well. The vacation, we do not believe, would impact any current or future utility or transportation needs in the area, and we recommend the vacation of this existing right-of-way. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission for Ms. Ness? Commissioner Gregor.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Ness. There's the fact is right now this particular section of Cameron Street that's in question here does not connect to the part to the west. Is that right?
Correct.
Also, you know, we're gonna look at it.
Material here.
You mentioned that its vacation wouldn't necessarily restrict any future transportation use that could be planned, because I understand the bicycle and pedestrian plan, it's this section connecting from Oxford Avenue to Mappa Street and west or the western section of Cameron Street is slated to be a neighborhood bicycle route in our plan. So I guess, how do you see that happening, us being successful in being able to do that, even if we vacate this, and there being that elevation change between those two?
Yeah, that's a hard part. I did look up the elevation change in there, and right now it is approximately a 31% slope through there. If we were to achieve an 8% slope going through this area, we would have to bring the contours back to approximately the alley west, and then the first parcel to the east as well. So it'd be about 250 feet that we would have to make that elevation change. And then we're also introducing some, reducing the grade difference across the intersection, but still having a grade difference at that intersection. That would be a safety concern for me. I believe that potentially the bicycle and pedestrian connection could be made, probably with stairs and a runnel if we would need to, but I'm not sure that a motor vehicular roadway would be achievable without a lot of retaining walls and infrastructure in that area.
Follow-up question to that.
Yes.
So a bike trail would need the same 8% grade, you would say, or is there a way to have some switchbacks in it, or how exactly? I'm just trying to figure out how this is still going to work, to have that be part of our, if we want to follow our bicycle and pedestrian plan and what we want to achieve here, and with connecting this neighborhood directly to the new development. I guess I'm just concerned that if this right-of-way is vacated, we loosen our flexibility to be able to achieve that.
True. So we're going from a 66-foot right-of-way to a 33-foot with the recommended vacation through this area. I have not laid out a trail to see what type of connection or land use would need to be made to get that to be achievable. I guess I just looked at the grade differences today and how much it would be pushed out to reach that 8%.
Okay. Another
Question,
follow-up?
if that's
Go
okay,
ahead.
unless there's other questions you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Peterson. Commissioner Peterson.
When you come south on Mappa Street from Cameron Street to West Madison Street, can you take a left there to go east?
It is signed a right turn only.
Okay. So will the south 33 feet, if the north 33 feet is vacated, would the south 33 feet accommodate two-way vehicular traffic?
Yes.
Okay.
It's very narrow through there. On Mappa Street, it's 17 feet face-to-face. Cameron Street is 30 feet face-to-face. Going through that corner, I don't know that two vehicles can meet at that corner right now and turn at the same time. But traffic does travel two directions on that street, to my knowledge.
I'm just thinking of the traffic that's going to access the properties west of Mappa Street, immediately north and south of Cameron Street, that their access, they could still come out to Oxford Avenue.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the building that we have, the apartment building that I guess we've approved it to the point that it's moving forward, and and it's essentially requiring this vacation in order to be built. Is that correct? Apartment building just to the north. Sorry. The apartment building that is slated to be built on Oxford Avenue, the Tyler Warner building. I'm not sure what it's actually going to be called, but that's the impetus for the vacation. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I believe it's called Cannery Residences, I want to say. They are awaiting this process to conclude in order to bring forward their final site plan. A general development plan was approved by Planning Commission and Council back in January, February timeframe. So yes, it's been a while since you saw this last, and they're looking at a two-phase project. But so because of that north-south alleyway that, as Ms. Ness mentioned, is unclear its status, that's really kind of the I would say the holdup, but that's the obstacle at this point for that phase one, which would be more to the north, adjacent to Maxon Street at Oxford Ave. So phase two would be impacting that north half of Cameron Street. So without showing that, trying to verbally explain kind of where those lay out here.
Thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. This might be a question for Jeremy more than anybody. I haven't seen the plan you're referring to, but if you had a trail go up that steep hill, where would it go from there? Would it go onto the street? I guess if it connects to the street on a corner like that especially a narrow corner, that seems like it could be a little dangerous, but it also seems like you could put steps in there for pedestrians. Maybe it just wouldn't be suitable for bikes. What can you?
Commissioner Gregor, do you have a?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Seymour. I do think that this plan was approved by the Planning Commission back in December. So page 34 of the city's bicycle and pedestrian plan shows it as a neighborhood bike route, as a way for people to essentially avoid Madison Street, which is a pretty bad place to bike in this, at least in the parallel section right there. And it essentially goes from like the Montessori school area east to connect to Oxford Avenue. That's the intent of that particular bike route. And it certainly would be a challenge with or without the vacation. I'm just trying to figure out, I just want us to be aware of what options we may be taking away by doing this. And it certainly could end up being more of a staircase. And but I've seen trails put in some pretty tight spots, particularly in Milwaukee. Actually, right next to the Wisconsin Bicycle Federation office, there's a pretty tight spot where they go up about this amount of a grade from the Hank Aaron State Trail in the Menominee River Valley. So it probably can be done. But and as to the safety of it, I think that the bike and pedestrian plan is I think it's safer to get bikes onto roads like that, including around a corner like that we could probably do some traffic calming on. To avoid Madison Street would be the number one goal, I think. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I understand. I get it. I was just looking for some clarification.
Sure.
Another good route that I take is Maxon Street to avoid Madison Street. But that's all I got. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you. This is a public hearing, so if there are any members of the public that are here to speak on this vacation of a section of Cameron Street, item number 2 on the agenda, you're welcome to come forward. Seeing none, I'll see if there's a motion for this agenda item.
I'll move approval of the vacation of this parcel.
Thank you, Commissioner Granlund. Is there a second? Commissioner Peterson.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3 is a public discussion for approval by the Plan Commission on parking expansion for the brewing project at 1807 Oxford Avenue.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Before you is a expansion of a parking lot for the brewing project. It's located at number 3 across from the site you just approved. In your packet is an aerial photograph. The parking lot, this parking lot was done last year. It is completely full when you go there. Went there before the 4th of July holiday on I think it was a Thursday night, and it was completely full, so there is no overflow parking at this time. They have graded this area, which you approved in January for the 2nd phase. Now they're proposing the 3rd phase. In your packet too is the site plan showing the additional stalls. It's to the east of the site, south of the site, pardon me, north of the former Family Video, now Dollar General. The proposed land use is 11 stall parking lot. The original site plan was for 29 stalls, and again in January you approved 33 additional stalls. 29 stalls currently exist on the site. My understanding is they would like to have both parking lots, the 33 stall and this, if this is approved tonight, the 11 stalls built at the same time. The demand has increased significantly with the business. My understanding, they have added staff as well to the site. That's why the need for additional stalls. When they constructed the building, they did add 24 bicycle stalls on the east side of the site, and they are existing, and that will not change at this time. The grading and drainage report is in your packet along with the public utilities, the traffic. They are proposing one more driveway to be added here. Cameron Street, again, has no parking at this time. That would be a potential reconstruction next year or the following year that may add street parking. It may not. The street trees that are proposed along the front, we would postpone that until the street is reconstructed. They should work with the city on that. Transit is noted in your report as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions for the proposal.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Petrie. One aspect of the expansion that I had a question about was the pavement, like on the far southern end, which I guess the way we're looking at would be the right side. There's a lot of pavement, I guess, for a relatively small number of new spots. So I'm wondering if the extra pavement on the far east is going to be used for like storage of vehicles, or if there's going to be like parallel parking there potentially, or how that extra pavement is going to be used. Because I see there's not quite enough space for like an extra row that faces to the south.
Yeah. Looking at the site plan, it looks to be a 33 feet. Typically, you need a turning radius of 24. The applicant is here, and along with the owner of the brewing project, that would be an excellent question for them. I'm not 100% sure where they're going to put their snow. That might be where they put it, but like I mentioned, the engineer and the owner of the brewing project is in the audience, so that would be an excellent question for them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Petrie from the commission? Seeing none, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Mr. Glass is here to speak on it. Or are you going to have your engineer speak?
We can tag team it.
Okay.
Matt Apple with Advanced Engineering Concepts.
And I'm Will Glass, the president of the Brewing Project.
Okay. You want to address the first question first? Or Mr. Gregor, do you want to express that question again?
Mr. Chair and you guys, Mr. Apple, Mr. Glass. Yeah, so I understand obviously we had a large snow year this last year, so that may be the answer to my question as to why exactly there's maybe more pavement that would be needed on the south side to be able to access the parking spaces on that part of the addition to the parking lot.
So I think that I guess just for context, one of the reasons why we are where we are right now, there was some miscommunication between myself and the architect who originally drew it. I'm not going to blame it on him. It's not his fault. But I thought that this was the way we were going forward all along. We went out and actually staked it off. And to answer your question, when we went out, we looked at a swath of grass that was about yay wide. And we decided that it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to maintain that, especially during the winter, than a chunk of grass that's inevitably going to be dirt for basically the entire spring and most of summer before the snow dumps back on it. So yes, it's snow, and being the guy who does the snow removal, we can't push it onto the bike trail. So we're going to end up probably taking up that entire new portion with snow, if it's anything even close to what we had this year. So.
Thank you.
We just paved right up against the existing edge that's there. The area that's vacant right now that was just recently kind of graded up was a vacant, building site where a building had been taken down. Yeah, there's some overhang of the pavement from the family video site. So rather than, have, like you said, a strip of grass like this that's not functioning, if they want to park in the back of their building, there could be egress back and forth with the pavement, and we've provided the proper water quality treatment with the swale that's there. Yeah, it's just a very effective use of an extra 6 or 8 feet. Somebody mentioned parallel parking. That type of parallel parking in that location is not ideal. If somebody sees fit, they might use it if the parking lot's full, but it could serve the family video. I know some cars park there for the family video management, that sort of thing. So it's just, tightens that area up. We just match the pavement that's there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Is there a motion to approve this site plan? Commissioner Brenholt.
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Wolfgram seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And that motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 is a public discussion for approval by Plan Commission to amend the master plan for the Oakwood Mall, 4850 Gulf Road. The sign plan. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you. Number 4 on your agenda item on the map is the Oakwood Mall site. In particular, we're looking at the old Yonkers site. An aerial photograph is in your packet. along with some new elevations for the new tenant to take over Home Furniture. Before you is an amendment to the master sign plan for the Oakwood Hood Mall on the south side of Eau Claire. The former Yonkers store has been purchased by Home Furniture, who is the applicant tonight. The existing master plan notes that multiple signs are allowed, but when you have a tenant with the exterior wall, they are allowed one sign. The Sleep Express, which is located with one of the entrances, is a brand that Home Furniture sells. Their current store has a sign that has Home Furniture along with Sleep Express. The planning staff went back and forth on this one, but thought it was best to amend the sign plan to allow for additional sign along one of the walls. Now, each tenant would be allowed a sign, so you do see a tenant space here that would be for a different tenant, not Home Furniture at this time. The sign plan amendment before you, they are proposing the Home Furniture sign, which is allowed, the Sleep Express store, which is the amendment. They also are proposing a Home Furniture pickup store sign on the back of the building. But before you tonight to review is this Sleep Express store. All the signs would have to meet the C3 district standards, would be reviewed by staff with a sign permit. Home Furniture is taking up majority of the square footage of the redevelopment of the site. Again, I mentioned the Home Furniture existing site does have a similar sign package as before you. They're currently looking to move out of that location. With that being said, again, they would have to be reviewed with a sign permit. It appears that all of them meet the sign square footage. I can go over that real quick with you. That's one sign up to 250 square feet for the tenants. Each of the sign could be the maximum up to that 250 square feet. Staff does believe they are consistent with that. Also, staff would recommend approval of the request. The Yonkers site did have a sign in the front, and they did have a sign on this wall facing 53. But there is trees in the way at this time. With that being said, staff would recommend approval of the request, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? All right. Thank you, Mr. Petrie. And is the applicant here? Do you have anything you want to add?
Sure.
Come on up. Just give us your name and...
Hi, Rod Johansson. I'm with Home Furniture. Just wanted to add that in the mattress specialty category, most of for convenience purposes, even though mattresses are available in furniture stores, a lot of times you see them sold in separate locations, such as you do here in Eau Claire. And so we're just trying to make it convenient like we have in the past in our current existing location, to make it so customers can easily get in and get out and move on with their business, and make it so it's convenient for customers to understand where to go and do that process. And so it's kind of pretty simple.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this amendment to the master sign plan? Mr. Peterson.
I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the sign plan.
Okay. Commissioner Seymour.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call a question. All those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. Code compliance items. Seeing none for that item. Future agenda items. Okay, and additions or corrections to the minutes. All right.
Oh, may I, before we close?
Yes, you may.
I apologize for the interruption. Did want to note, I I guess it may fall under future agenda items, more so future agenda meeting locations. But I think there were some questions about when can we go back to City Hall? And as of now, I would still plan on the next two meetings, the August meetings being here, just so we don't get disappointed if we can't be there. But there is a public open house next Thursday, the 25th, so 10 days from today, from 3 to 8 p.m. So look forward to seeing everybody there. Take a walk through before all the furniture and the people get moved back in. So this will be one opportunity for the public, as well as commissions, boards, committees to kind of do a walkthrough, get a tour, and see all the wonderful renovations that have been done before we get into full operations, likely in September.
Oh, it sure looks great from the outside.
So far, so good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing nothing further and without objection, this meeting is adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.